Okay, I'm going to talk about this flock surveillance camera case and how it led to a bad arrest, but I'm going to talk about it kind of in general terms. I'm not really going to get into the details of this particular case that I'm working on any more than what's already in the media, but I want to talk about the broad policy level questions that are raised by mass surveillance as it relates to policing. The case that I'm working on is this one out of San Diego where my clients were, we allege, falsely arrested based on a flock hit. And the crime that gave rise to the investigation was an individual brandished a gun at some people, drove off in a car. Police thought the car was a red Alfa Romeo. Police used the flock system that San Diego has to search for a red Alfa Romeo, apparently, and ended up getting a hit to a red Alfa Romeo. That red Alfa Romeo was 5 miles away, and the hit occurred before the pursuit even started. And so we allege that on its face, that hit was the wrong car. It couldn't have been the relevant car. It was miles away. But that led law enforcement down the road of investigating my clients and putting them in jail and so forth. So the case raises some interesting questions around how flock and other mass surveillance systems ought to be used. And here's two premises or underlying ideas that I think are important in these cases. One is that it's not really the job of police in general to critique their own cases. Their job is to make the case. And they know that other actors and other players in the system will come along later, like a detective, like a DA, like the jury, like the judge, and they will evaluate whether the case is proven beyond that relatively low probable cause standard. But the job of cops is just to make the case for probable cause. Now, there is a 14th Amendment thread, and we allege it in the complaint, around the need for follow-up investigations sometimes, but those are a relatively limited set of circumstances. We contend it applies here because this problem with the flock hit and the timestamp and location was so obvious on its face. But a lot of times, maybe that's not going to be the case. And a lot of times, it's just a set of facts that probably could be consistent with some individual. And the job of the cops is just to, and I say cops, I mean law enforcement, sheriffs, deputies, or whoever. The job of law enforcement is just to make the case, not so much to explore every other possibility under the sun, but just to follow the case where the evidence leads and try to make as strong a case as they can. And then the other theme that I think is important in considering all this stuff is that most crimes, with some exceptions, are not all that complex. We're really used to TV shows about policing in which there's a grand mystery to be solved. Who could have possibly done this? And is it that person? Oh, no, it's not. We were misled. It's actually the butler or whatever. But in real life, most crimes are not that way. Most crimes involve the same motives over and over and the usual suspects over and over. It's the girlfriend, it's the boyfriend, it's the wife, the husband, it's the child, it's the employee, it's the gang member. It's the people who have committed the same type of crime 10 times before and now they're committing it again. It doesn't require brain surgery most of the time. Some of these crimes can be pretty forensically complex, and I'm not dismissing that. I'm just saying a lot of crime is committed by the people that we expect to commit crimes, and it's committed by folks who are not all that sharp, who leave tons and tons of evidence all over the place pointing directly to them. Even, literally the keys to their own car or their ID. In some of the cases I've worked on where my clients were just, relatively limited people who were doing the best they could and maybe made some bad choices. Anyway, that's the idea, right? Not all that complex. And so it's not the job of police to turn over every rock or explore every random possibility, but just to make the case. But that can lead to tunnel vision. And the problem that mass surveillance creates is that it takes this pretty limited universe of stuff that law enforcement typically consider when evaluating who committed a crime or why a crime was committed, and it expands it way, 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 way out. Okay, so we're not just looking at the people who are in the room or the people who are on that block or the people who work for that company. We are looking at everybody in the entire city who might potentially be linked to whatever criteria police want to type into the interface of Flock or ShotSpotter or every potential person who might have pinged against that cell phone tower. Okay. Mass surveillance expands the pool dramatically. And so that just creates a lot more of a complex problem for law enforcement to sort out. And I don't know that it changes the legal standard. Probable cause is still probable cause. And the way probable cause is interpreted in general is that just because there may be some other way to view the evidence that's not consistent with guilt doesn't mean that a law enforcement officer's interpretation of the evidence as pointing toward guilt is necessarily wrong or legally off base. So that standard means that law enforcement can pull these hits, right, from Flock or whatever other database and have an objective basis to accuse somebody of a crime, even when the evidence might very well be susceptible of pointing to 10 other people too, right? I don't know how many other Flock hits there were to Red Alfa Romeos in this incident that I'm working on, but I suspect there were other ones, right? Because it's a big city. It's not like it's that rare of a car, but it can't be the case that every single Red Alfa Romeo in the town of San Diego was related to that crime. That's just not possible. So expanding the pool of potential suspects really creates interesting issues. And I think it's going to require, if not a legal change, at least a change around training so that law enforcement officers are more sensitive to the idea that a big pool of suspects created through data analysis has a lot of potential for false positives. And then the other piece of this issue I think is important is that it creates the potential, these systems create the potential for law enforcement to view their role a little bit differently, namely to in fact pursue the potential that they've made a mistake. And perhaps they should, because it's not hard to run these systems in a way that explores the possibility of error. And in the case I'm working on in particular, my clients immediately explained to law enforcement where they had come from, and the place where they had come from is covered with Flock cameras, covered with them for miles, right? So had there been an attempt to say, whoa, let's see where that Red Alfa Romeo with that license plate was in the half an hour leading up to the time when we found it, and whether it was in fact where they said it was, well, that would have been the end of it. And a lot of other systems have the potential to function in that same way too, whether it's ShotSpotter, whether it's pulling GPS data from cell phones, or using surveillance footage. They can't only be, or I think they shouldn't only be, a one-way ratchet pointing toward guilt, because these systems are surveilling all of us all the time. So they ought to be used to get an accurate picture of what actually happened, not just a picture that points toward guilt for a particular individual when that scenario is ignoring a lot of other factors. So that's what I think about this situation, and just the broader set of policy concerns that are raised by these mass surveillance systems. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts about it too, and thank you for listening. Take care.